Duffy's Cut, what was once thought to be folklore in this part of Chester County, has become an all too real tale of sacrifice, betrayal, death, and possibly even murder. A few years ago, on a dark ember night, a night believed to be when lost spirits can reach out and ask for help, some of the spirits from Duffy's Cut appeared in visible form to Dr. William Watson, a professor of history here at Immaculata University, and in essence, changed the way he would view his most recent discovery.
For 100 or more years, railroaders maintained bits and pieces of the story about 57 young Irishmen who came to Philadelphia in June of 1832 to work on the railroad, and by August of that same year, they were all dead. Locals preserve ghostly tales associated with Duffy's Cut. Residents in the area have come face to face with something that they can neither explain nor forget.
Could the spirits of the 57 men who died at Duffy's Cut be calling out, searching and hoping, unable to rest in peace, unable to leave this world?
We believe that the answers lie within the facts and the spirits of Duffy's Cut. Come along as we explore these mysteries, and you can be the judge. In June of 1832, 57 young Irishmen disembarked from a ship called the John Stamp in Philadelphia and were picked up by a fellow Irishman named Philip Duffy to work on Mile 59, a particularly difficult stretch of the Philadelphia and Columbia Railroad located near Immaculata University.
During their time here, the Irishmen worked in horribly hot and humid conditions. When cholera began to rage in Philadelphia and in Chester County, its appearance was blamed on foreigners, and in particular the Irish, who tended to live in these rough conditions. When the cholera epidemic of 1832 raged throughout the Delaware Valley, about 900 died in the Philadelphia region. Duffy's men were unceremoniously buried in an unmarked grave by Duffy's blacksmith, somewhere deep in this stretch of woods discovered by Dr. William Watson and his team.
Dr. Watson, how did you first become involved with this story?
We became aware of Duffy's Cut by accident. This is something that the railroad back in 1832 did its best to forget about. They literally erased the memory of these men from the human record, all except for a railroad file that by accident happened to be passed down in my family. That fact, however, was not known to me when the whole thing started, because it actually began, I don't know how else to describe this except to say that it began with a sort of supernatural experience in the year 2000, right actually out front of this building on what turns out to have been an ember night, which I didn't know at the time. And I saw, along with a colleague of mine, 3 glowing things out on the lawn. It was about 10 o'clock at night. We were coming back from a bagpiping event, so we were talking about where we'd just been, which is with World War II Marine veterans out in Lancaster. We had no supernatural frame of mind, and he looks out the window and he says to me, "Billy, what am I looking at?" I said, "I don't know." Let me call over and look at it, and it looked to me like lawn art. It looked like the things you'd see down at the Art Museum in Philadelphia before you get to the cafeteria. Looked like neon art, someone's idea of art. Because of course, right across the lawn is the gym, and there's an art show there, from time to time. And I said, no, can you imagine people would actually pay for this sort of thing? And they vanished. We went out and looked, and with no explanation at all. Until 2 years later, I'm up at my brother's, and we're finally distributing my grandfather's things from his career on the railroad. He retired as director of personnel at the Pennsylvania Railroad, and before the railroad put everything up for auction, he was allowed to take whatever he wanted. And one of the things he took was from when he was the executive assistant to Martin Clement. Martin Clement was the 8th president of the Pennsylvania Railroad. Back in 1909, Clement created this file on Duffy's Cut from whatever available evidence had survived from the previous century. And Clement himself also had put the wall up around the presumed site of the burial spot. And my brother brings this file out, and first thing I see, of course, is the geography, and say, my goodness, this is where I work, between Fraser and Malvern. And then beyond that, of course, the fact that leaping out from the pages of me were people seeing glowing shapes, and people in ghostly form that corresponded to exactly what my buddy Tom and I had seen, but we had no way. We would have said 100 years ago that these were fiery figures, but not neon, because neon didn't exist. I don't know. But that led to this. That led to this in a crazy, strange way. And of course, John Ahtes is an Irish specialist, and the one thing leads to another. He and I are out between class, before class, after class, trying to find evidence of this wall, and we found it in Columbus Day of 2002.
The discovery of the wall and the possibility that this area could indeed be the burial grounds of the lost men sparked the interest of many local officials and organizations, and with their assistance, Dr. Watson and his team were given the go-ahead for their archaeological dig. Let's join them as they explore the site.
Locals think it's a pretty spooky place too, so they give it a very wide berth.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, Julian Sash, who's a local Chester County historian, fairly accurate, described a man who was wandering the tracks slightly and who claimed not to be drunk and to have seen glowing figures dancing down here, presumably on their graves. Now, there is, of course, a phenomenon with bodies recently buried that there are some things emanate from them. But this was probably some time afterwards. And so there was a local folklore that something awful had happened here and the place was haunted.
Could this site be haunted? Could, in fact, the local folklore be true? Well, some of the residents that we've heard from firmly believe that they have experienced hauntings themselves.
My wife and I were one of the first residents in our development built near what is now known as Duffy's Cut. Every so often my wife would complain of someone looking in the window. She had this uneasy feeling of being watched at times. She thought that maybe they were construction workers looking to see what the finished product looked like. One afternoon she saw someone again and asked me to go outside and take a look. I searched the entire perimeter of the house and could find no trace of anyone in the area. As I came back into the house, I saw what looked to be a woman dressed in black sitting in this chair. It appeared as if she was taking in the light of the room. Then she vanished, and I never saw anything again. Now, I'm a sane and rational man and never really believed in ghosts, but I know I definitely saw a woman in black, and there's no other way to explain this.
What does a woman in black have to do with Duffy's Cut? Through diligent investigation, the discovery of the John Stamps passenger list, showing proof that a woman was among the 57 young Irishmen, and still there have been others to witness firsthand the spirits of Duffy's Cut.
In 1972, just a few years before I was born, my family bought this house in a neighborhood just west of Duffy's Cut. And in the backyard, there were these woods that my sister and brother would often explore, and they would find old bottles and artifacts. And on a couple of occasions, my older brother and sister thought they found horse bones and animal skulls. Now, they often viewed what they found as buried treasure and began collecting them, and after a while started bringing them in the home. And strange things started happening, noises and moans, and my sister at one point actually thought she saw somebody staring at her through her second-story window. Now, in the crawl space of my sister's room, which led to a storage room, is where she kept most of her buried treasures. And it wasn't until she got rid of everything that things started to get back to normal. Now I was born in 1974, and my friends and I guess in the early 80s, would begin exploring the woods and having the knowledge that there possibly could be a mass grave in the area. We were determined to find if any proof of skeletons buried in those woods. And after only a couple shovelfuls, we were scared off by our conscience and the reality of what we might actually find there.
The dedication ceremony at Immaculata University is long over, the placing of the marker on King Road complete, and just recently proof was found through ground-penetrating sonar that the remains of the Irishmen of Duffy's Cut are buried just a short distance from the train track that each day carries thousands of commuters.
Continuing their efforts, Dr. Watson and John Ahtes, along with the assistance of the Chester County Emerald Society and several others, will be exhuming the bones for examination by the coroner. With the DNA results, any surviving relatives of the deceased will be notified. And finally, the mystery of whatever became of these fathers, sons, or brothers of their ancestors will be solved.
The spirits of the lost souls will finally find the peace that they have so long been searching for. After a Christian ceremony, the remains of the 57 young Irishmen will make their way here to West Laurel Hill Cemetery, located in Ballackinwood, Pennsylvania, along with the hope that they will find the peace that they have deserved for the past 170 years.
Ironically, some of the very people buried in this cemetery were community leaders, railroad pioneers, and some of the same people that could have possibly been responsible for the death of Duffy's men.